The PlayStation Classic has been so disappointing since its release. Even prior to that, we started to get the impression that this was going to be a very underwhelming console, and I had that feeling from the start. I felt like so many different PlayStation consoles could already play the PS1 games that I just felt like they should put these games out there on the PSN store for PS4 users and release them that way. However, if I could have bought this for something like 50 bucks, I might have been a little bit more interested. To me, this wasn't about being a collectible in terms of, looking neat on a shelf. To me, it was more about if there was actually any playability there. And the truth was, not all 20 games were going to be 20 games that I wanted to play. And I was even more scared off by that, by how delayed they were in announcing the other 15 games. And my assumption was because they would be very underwhelming. And that ended up being the case. However, recently it's came out that there is information in the PS Classic source code that indicates that there were about 30 or so other games that maybe could have been included instead. Now, these games are not actually on the console, but the source code points to the fact that these games were potentially tested on the console. Maybe there was some work to maybe get them on that just never ended up materializing. But regardless, this lineup of games is, in my opinion, has some that are substantially better than what ended up on the final product, and it's disappointing. Now, there's two reasons why that could be before we get into the actual list. These are some big name titles that come with big dollar licenses. Maybe Sony wasn't comfortable paying those license fees. I'm not sure. The second reason is these games are, generally speaking, of a higher graphical quality, a higher complexity, things of that nature, where I would just assume that they take a higher CPU power to run. We do see that there is variables in the amount of power required to run these PS1 games. I know with the original Xbox, there is PS1 emulators for it, but it can only run certain games. Many of the games being the lower power games, which ironically are many of the games seen on the PS1 Classic, whereas some of these games that weren't included are not compatible with the PS1 emulator on the original Xbox because there simply is not enough power in the original Xbox to properly emulate these more complex PS1 games. So whether it was for the licensing or the lack of power, these games did not make it on. So we're going to take a look at that list, and I'm going to point out some that I think were particularly important to me and I really wish would have been on the final product that maybe would have made me change my mind about it. So from the top, Armored Car, Master of Arena, Chocobo's Dungeon, Colin Mcrae Rally, which is, I think of Colin Mcrae Rally as being a launch title for the PlayStation 2, but it obviously did have a legacy with the PlayStation. Then the big one though, Crash Bandicoot and Crash Bandicoot 2. Now the recent release of the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy has kind of made people speculate that it wasn't going to make it on there from the beginning just because it had just gotten a recent re-release and it didn't really make sense to have it on new consoles and have it on this. It would just kind of cannibalize the sale of it in general. And then probably my favorite movie game of all time, Toy Story 2, Devil Dice, Driver. That's a fantastic open world game back when GTA was just the flat, real, in my opinion, boring looking. Prior to GTA 3, we had Driver, so Driver was a fantastic open world game. Irregeiser, I'm not familiar with that. It looks like it was a Japanese version of the ROM that was set to be included. Fighting Force, Gran Turismo. Now, Gran Turismo likely having some problems with the car licensing or the music licensing. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. This was the EU ROM, so this would have been Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone for an American release, we would assume. And that was a fantastic kind of open world game that I think introduced a lot of people to the open world 3D genre. Kaguru. Not sure about that one either. That was a Japanese ROM that was set to be included. Kolano, Door to the Phantom Isle, another Japanese one. Another Kula World. This was an EU game. I'm not familiar with that. Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver, Medal of Honor. I really enjoyed Medal of Honor on the PlayStation 1. I think that would have been fantastic to include. Medieval, Mega Man Legends. That is a very expensive PlayStation 1 game. Would have been fantastic to include for that reason. However, I'm fairly certain that it is available on the PSN network for $6 or $7, so it's not really worth buying the disc copy. Mr. Driller G, Paka Paka Passion, Parapper the Rapper, I've never been able to really say that properly, Parasite Eve, Raystorm, Ridge Racer, Silent Hill, Spec Ops, Stealth Patrol, Street Fighter Alpha 3, Street Fighter EX plus Alpha. And you see with that D-pad, I think that having these fighting games in there would have made a lot more sense. You know, more fighting games, I think the better when you're just working with the D-pad. Suikoden, Tomb Raider, and Tomb Raider 2 obviously would have been very substantial and got left out. Toomba, Tony Hawk Pro Skater, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, Vagrant Story, Wild Arms 2, of course Wild Arms 1 was included, Exvius 3D. So quite a few of those are Japanese ROMs that I am absolutely not familiar with. But there's definitely a good, few handful of them on here that I personally would have been really excited about. What about you guys? Let me know down in the comments section. Would these have been any games that you would have been excited to see? I am shocked, really, by the absence of Spyro on not only the final console, but this list. The absence of Spyro, which obviously did get a re-release, but just kind of the fact that Spyro was never even tested is kind of shocking to me, especially when Crash Bandicoot was tested, and that had the re-release deal going on. So PlayStation Classic, obviously very disappointing. You could definitely make a better product yourself, just using like a Raspberry Pi and the emulators, or maybe picking up an NVIDIA Shield for a little bit more money. And just kind of makes me wonder, if Sony wouldn't have pursued such large margins on this product, or, if they would have charged $120 for it, what would that have done to the game list? What would that have done to the quality of the product? I think it would have changed things substantially. And you think, $20, that's not very much money. Well, if they sell 1 million of these, 20 more bucks is like 20 million more dollars, so it's $20 could have made a substantial difference, I think, for this product. But regardless, what we got, definitely underwhelming, and I would recommend you probably avoid it. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Bailey, and I will see you in the next video.